So it goes without saying that most of the Carey Price trade stuff that we hear about is kind of whack. And you know what? I'm going to go out there and say that this right here, this video topic that we're highlighting, is kind of in the same realm, but, you know, at the very least, I think there are indeed some ideas that are worth thinking about, so it's kind of why we're making this video in the first place. Let's go over onto TSN 690 Radio, onto a previous edition of the Weekend Game Plan. This is Marco D'Amico joining Matthew Ross and Dave Trentadue to discuss the Montreal Canadiens in a way that is summarized here on Reddit. The link to the full audio hit, it's 24 minutes long. It's a segment on the show from, when was that, January 16th? It's the 19th today, so a few days ago. This entire thing was summarized onto the Canadian subreddit by Blaze of Glory 72. Thank you very much, Blaze of Glory. You're always going out there as a real one, transcribing and summarizing these Habs radio hits. And we're going to go over onto this post, highlight what they say on TSN 690 as to what the Canadiens could potentially do if you really wanted to go out there and explore a Carey Price trade, because, come on. Carey Price is the biggest, most expensive, longest tenured Canadian trade chip, and I say trade chip and not player because longer tenured Canadians do exist, like Nick Suzuki for example, but Price is the biggest and baddest of the bunch when it comes to guys that everybody in Montreal throws around in trade conversations. Now, we have to preface this entire talk by saying that Carey Price does indeed have a full no-move clause, so if he ever does get traded, it's gonna be of his own volition. He's going to decide, okay, sure, he has to give the okay. Now, I get it, everybody loves to say, okay, but Montreal sucks, and they're gonna do a rebuild again, and does Carey Price really want to stick around for another rebuild? He should just get out while he can, yada yada yada. Okay, let's kind of keep that idea in the back of our minds as we go over Blaze of Glory 72's summary of this recent piece on TSN 690. They started the show off talking about Carey Price and the possibility that he will get moved. The host, Matthew Ross, mentions the possibility that Price could be a fit in San Jose, who have seemed to turn things around recently. He says that a swap of Price for Marc-Edouard Vlasic, who is also signed to 2026, could make sense. D'Amico says the Price situation is very complicated. To move him, he would have to want to be moved, and even if he did, few teams could actually afford to take him on. D'Amico thinks San Jose could make sense, but if we did a swap of Price and Vlasic, San Jose would have to add. A first and a top prospect would need to be included, given that Price is much more valuable than Vlasic at this point. D'Amico mentions the San Jose prospect Thomas Bordeleau as someone we should target in this scenario. Now, the next parts of the radio hit go over the draft and 2022 and Shane Wright and all that and Ryan Poehling, so we're not going to talk about that here, but this is our main idea that was brought up on TSN 690 Sports Talk Radio. Carey Price to the San Jose Sharks for a package that includes a first-round pick, prospect Thomas Bordeleau, as well as defenseman Marc-Edouard Vlasic. Does this make sense? Let's go over it here in this video. So, Carey Price, as we all know, is probably the best goaltender of the 2005s to the 2015s. Like, if you really want to narrow down a specific time frame, there is a period wherein Carey Price is probably the best goaltender, if not one of the best goaltenders in the league, and I would say that's a pretty fair argument to make. Carey Price, though, is indeed making $10.5 million a season till the end of 2026's season, wherein he will be, 38? Because he's 34 right now? That's a lot of years for a guy that's going to be making $10.5 million a season, which is kind of why a lot of people are speculating whether or not Carey Price would consider waiving that no-move clause to say, okay, I'll just get traded to another team that likely has a better chance of winning. And so we go over onto the target team. The San Jose Sharks are actually doing pretty well this year, as mentioned in the radio hit. They are 4th in the Pacific Division with 44 points in 40 games played, 6-3-1 in their last 10. But despite the fact that they're actually doing all right and they're in a standing where they technically are in the wild card, they do have a negative goal differential. 112 goals for, 121 goals against, and their goaltending tandem, if you want to go ahead and check out Adin Hill and James Reimer, sure, they're doing okay. Reimer has a .918 in 21 games played and a .265 goals against. Adin Hill has a .906 save percentage and a .273 goals against in 22 games. So They're not bad, per se. However, they are just kind of middle of the pack right here. And actually, their other goaltender here, Zach Sarchenko, has a 9.52 and a 1.54 goals against in one game, so those numbers are very good, but of course, unsustainable. You don't want to go out there and put all your eggs into one basket. The trade that they are proposing here on TSN 690 goes as follows. Carey Price for Vlasic, Bordeleau, and a first. Let's go over Marc-Edouard Vlasic and take a look at why he is being mentioned. Pretty much it's because he's also 34 years old and he also has a contract that expires in 2026. However, where Carey Price's cap hit is 10.5 AAV, Vlasic's is only 7. He also is from Quebec, and he is a left-handed defenseman, so he's not a goaltender like Carey Price is. However, there is indeed somewhat of a need I think the Canadiens could say they have for left-handed defense. Vlasic, though, has definitely fallen off from where he was in previous years. This season, he's got 7 points in 33 games played. However, he was never really noted as a primary offensive defenseman. I mean, he did have 39 points in 67 games played back in 2015-16 when they went to the finals, but Vlasic was more known for his defensive capabilities. If you wanted to talk about offense on the San Jose Blue Line, you were talking about guys like Erik Karlsson, you're talking about Brent Burns. You're not talking about Vlasic in that way because Vlasic was more of the shutdown guy. This season, though, there is indeed more of a decline production-wise. However, when it comes to defensive stability and capabilities, I mean, I'm of the belief that defensive instincts don't really go away a whole bunch as you get older, so I definitely do think that there is some value to Marc-Edouard Vlasic and his game in the NHL. It's just, is that value $7 million good? Is that value $7 million a season good until he'll be 38 years old in 2026 good? Like, I don't really think so. But contract-wise, long-term commitment-wise, money-wise, it does work out if you want to go out there and say a Vlasic for Price trade could be on the radar, and if you're trying to balance things out because Carey Price is seen as this goaltender that could absolutely just steal games and do all this in the playoffs and whatnot, I do think that you could say that Price should be evaluated at a higher value perspective than Vlasic. However, a first and Bordeleau? That is a bit much. Maybe Bordeleau by himself, but a first too? Boy, I don't know if you're going to go out there and get yourselves a haul like that for Carey Price, especially if that haul is coming in at a cheaper total value amount in terms of money like Vlasic. But if you go over Thomas Bordeleau and you see what this guy's up to with the University of Michigan, he's been absolutely fantastic. He was drafted out of the NTDP in 2020 in the second round by San Jose, and ever since then he has absolutely exploded onto the scene. Now, sure, his last year with the Wolverines was technically better point per game wise with 30 points in 24 games played as a freshman. This season, though, he's got 21 points in 20 games played. The Wolverines are really stacked. They've got a whole bunch of great players, Power, Hughes, Beniers, etc. So it's definitely quite spread out, the amount of production that everybody is getting on this team. Bordeleau, though, is one of the more flashy and capable players on this squad, so he definitely is a prospect, in my opinion, that does have some middle six, top six potential, and the San Jose Sharks picking him up in the second round was a very, very good steal. And I mean, he was seen as a steal immediately after the draft because of his great year in the NCAA, but this is the kind of guy that I think if the Montreal Canadiens are going to go out there and make a trade with San Jose for, it would be fair if you said, yeah, they should try to get that guy. Bordeleau's really good, so Montreal, have at it. He's 5'11", he is a center, and long-term, I do think that if you want to say your center depth is secure with Dvorak and Suzuki, and you need somebody else to fill out in a, let's say, third-line, second-line tweener role who can actually score some pretty significant points and do some very good things in the offensive zone, Bordeleau could be that guy, but of course, San Jose Sharks fans absolutely love this guy, so it's going to be very difficult to part with him in their minds, I would think. But if you're trading for Carey Price, it's going to take a lot to get the Montreal Canadiens to actually move on from this guy, because at the end of the day, contract-wise, age-wise, all that stuff, even though he is old, even though he is expensive, he still is Carey Price, and he still has that label and all of the stuff that he has done attached to his name. So, despite the fact that it might be proper for what the Canadiens should do, it is still going to be a pretty difficult decision to make should you go out there and convince Carey Price to waive his no-move and get him on another team. So, San Jose, you guys are doing pretty well right now, and you're doing well with Reimer and Adin Hill. Do you need to trade for a Carey Price? Do you need to trade for another goaltender? Habs Sports Talk Radio TSN 690 is arguing that you probably should think about it. So, what gives? Is a first Bordeleau and Marc-Edouard Vlasic enough, or is it too much? Talk to me in the comments, all your thoughts about this idea. If you're a Canadiens fan, would you be okay with a package like this? I think a lot of you would probably say yes, but if you disagree, feel free to let me know in the comment section why that is. If you would even trade Carey Price in the first place, that's another question as well. Do you even want to go out there and make this trade? Talk to me in the comments, all your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.